My name is Toni Brown, and my story today is in regards to losing my son, Mikkah Aramis Theodore Brown, at 13 months. I met Mikkah's father online at the time, and it wasn't long that we began dating before I became pregnant. I think we were dating about 3 months before I got pregnant with my son, even though we were not together, which I decided I did not want to be with this person. I still wanted him to have a relationship with his son and have access to his son and be part of his son's life. And unfortunately, my decision turned out to be a terrible one. As a result of me just trying to allow them to have that relationship, he was responsible for his murder. He was never violent. He was never physical towards me or my other children. He had other children. He had 5 other children. So I never would have anticipated that he was capable of anything of what he had done that day. I actually found out in the course of me being pregnant that he was back online trying to meet other women in my area. So that was why I was like, okay, I don't want a relationship with you. We're done, but you still can be a part of Mikkah's life. Just seeing him with his little sister, because at the time she was 2 when he was born, she was such a wonderful big sister. She helped me around the house. She loved on him. And my oldest at the time was around 11. He was still living in California, but when he moved back home, he finally had the little brother he had always wanted. And we just combined as a family, just Malachi, which is my oldest, Brioni, which is my middle, and Mikkah. And we just did everything together. We laughed, we sang, we danced around the house. They were just such great siblings, and he just was the sweetest, kindest, most loving baby you had ever met. Everybody just loved him. He was nothing but light. And he brought so much joy that I didn't even know I needed or wanted. And he was so pivotal in changing my life. At the time when I asked Mikkah's father to come to the house was when my babysitter had fallen through. And at that time, my son was 12, my daughter was 3. And there was no way I was going to allow a 12-year-old to watch his 3-year-old sister and 1-year-old brother. So he was at that time my only option for help, to be there for Mikkah because he was so young. And I asked him to come over and to babysit for me, which he said he had no problem doing. And at that time, even though we weren't together, we weren't arguing, we weren't fighting. And so he came over. For the first couple of days, everything was good in my eyes until that Friday morning when I got home from work. And I remember I was able to pay my rent this month, so I was late the last couple of months. I finally was on time for my rent. I went to the grocery store, got food, got diapers. Was going to drop his dad off and just have the rest of the weekend to just spend time with the kids and catch up on sleep. When I got home that morning, my oldest son, Malachi, came to me and he told me what he had seen. And he had seen Mikkah's dad swinging Mikkah by his neck. He had something around his neck and he was swinging him around his neck. And he said he swung him so high that his feet hit the ceiling. And he had taken the phone, so it wasn't like my son could call me or reach out to me that morning when he saw what he saw. So he waited till I got home. And I remember going upstairs and he wasn't trying to allow me to hold on to Mikkah or to really get to Mikkah at that time. And at some point he went downstairs. And that's when I grabbed Mikkah and I had put him in his car seat. And I remember snapping my fingers in front of his eyes and he didn't blink. And I remember yelling to the kids, get dressed, we got to go to the hospital. And at that time, knowing that I knew that he had harmed him, I went to speak and say, hey, he saw you do this. The voice in my head, and I just have to think of this as being divine intervention. It's like, no, shh, don't say anything. Get to the hospital. And you would think, like most people would think, 911 would have been like your immediate response. But it wasn't for me. It was just because I was a mom and I've always done everything on my own. It was just, I have to get him to the hospital. And so I remember grabbing the kids, convincing him to go with us to the hospital and having to drive with him next to me, wanting to just scream out, I know what you did, but still maintaining that I don't know what happened. Can you just take me through the story of what happened to him? Just trying to get some answers. And we pull up to urgent care. And I remember getting out of the car and asking him to take Mikkah into the facility. And he was just moving too slow for me. So you see this later on the camera, which I didn't know that they had recordings of us when we get into the parking lot. But you see me grab Mikkah and rush me and the kids into the urgent care. And I go up to the nurse and I tell her, hey, my son is not responsive. They immediately take him to the back and I'm watching them cut his clothes off. I'm watching them trying to just get him stabilized, and I'm just crying. And at this time, his dad is just trying to console me. And I just wanted him to just get off of me. And then when I turn and I look and I see them doing CPR, I lose it. Just hit the floor, and I'm crying and I'm screaming, and he's picking me up and he's telling me, calm down. And I was so angry at that moment because I knew he was responsible. And I'm screaming, just get off me, get off me. And the nurses, they grab me and they grab my children. They take us to another room. And at that time, I turned to my son and I asked him, are you sure you saw what you saw? Because I'm going to let these nurses know that this is what happened to him. It's going to be major. He was like, yes, Mom, I'm sure. So I remember at one point he tries to come in to the room, and thankfully the nurses stop him. And that same nurse, she comes back in, and I let her know what my son had seen. And they immediately call the police. And at some point, come back to me and they say he went from respiratory distress to respiratory arrest. And we have to fly him to Children's Hospital because he's not breathing. And I call my family and I let them know what's going on. My mom gets to the hospital and she screams at him, what did you do? What did you do? And she takes my son and my daughter to the police station where they question my son. They take his dad to the police station, and I have to drive myself to CHOA, Children's Hospital of Atlanta, by myself. I'm getting lost along the way because I'm hysterical. I'm crying. I'm trying to call my friends and family. I finally get to the hospital, and I remember talking to the doctor. Hey, before I studied, because it was in the legal field, I wanted to be a doctor. So I believe in science. I need you to tell me the truth. How bad is he? And she just shook her head. And she was like, we can't differentiate between the gray matter and the white matter in his brain. He is on a breathing machine. He's going to need a feeding tube. He will be a vegetable for the rest of his life. He will never walk again. He will never talk again. He's going to remain in this vegetative state. And I remember wanting to take him off life support right then. But faith, hope led me to just try to hold on to him. And for 3 days, I would see him do involuntary movements and think, hey, look, he's coming out of it. He's going to be okay. And they would tell me, no, that's just a result of his injuries. He was never going to be okay. I had to be told to eat. I didn't sleep. I remember they made me go home and take a shower, and I immediately just changed clothes and came right back. And on the 3rd day, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this to him. I can't do this to my children. And I had to decide to take him off life support. And with my family and friends around me, they placed him in my arms and they took him off all the machines. And he fought for 45 minutes. And his brother, remember he was 12, whispering in his ear, it's okay. You can go. We'll be okay. Go ahead and rest. And I remember him taking his last breath. And I remember the doctor looking at me and telling me he was gone. And I screamed so loud that they heard me in the waiting room. And I just held him and I just cried. We all were just broken. And at the time, my friends had gotten together to share my story and get it out the time. And I ended up doing a news interview like an hour after me taking him off life support, just trying to share my story and what had happened to me, and getting the phone call that it was time to take him to the morgue. So I go back, we get a mold of his handprint, they give me a lock of his hair, and they tell me it's time. And they were like, we can take him. And I was like, no, if this is the last time that I get to hold him, I'm going to take him myself. And I carried him to the morgue, and I remember him being cold. I remember him just for the first time in my life seeing what death meant. And they took him from me to the morgue, and I had to go back upstairs and collect my things and my 2 kids and go to the car, and losing it when I got to the car, seeing his car seat in the back, knowing that he was never going home with us again. And going home was the worst because his crib was in his brother's room because they shared a room, and seeing my son lose it, throw stuff around the room, screaming, this bastard took my brother. How am I going to console these 2 children when my whole world was shattered? I'm just trying to survive those days afterward. And I don't know this was possible, that you could cry for 2 weeks straight. But I literally cried every day for 2 weeks.
And then his funeral was 4 days later. At that time, I just remember signing things and going to get his suit that he was going to be buried in. I don't remember planning anything. I don't remember details. I just remember just getting his suit and having to buy a hat because his injuries were so severe that I had to buy a hat to cover his head because of all the trauma he faced. And I remember the wake, and I couldn't touch him. I couldn't get close to him because it was so surreal that he was laying in this casket. And the day of his funeral was so hard. And I remember when they were like, it was the end. I leaned over in the casket. Mind you, I couldn't touch him days before, but I kneeled him and I kissed him goodbye. I kissed him on his lips and I told him we were going to be okay. And going to the cemetery and having the ceremony and them telling me, Toni, you can't stay. We're going to lower him now. We need you to go. And so we left. And for 10 years, I didn't even have a tombstone for him. So when I would go visit him, it was nothing but grass. And finally, a few years after going to see him, I couldn't find him. And so I knew I needed a marker for him. I needed the world to know that he existed and that he was here and that he was an angel. And so a couple years ago, I finally was able to have the resources to lay him to rest. And it's hard now to see him. It's hard to visit him because it's been 12 years and it feels like it was yesterday. All of the memories, all of the trauma. So a year later, I get the phone call that we're going to trial. And as a result of me doing that news story, the DA at the time of our county, the actual DA herself, said, I'm going to try your case. I saw your news story and I saw your son, Malachi, and I'm going to take this case on. And so prior to us going to court, of course, the police called me in to get my side of the story, and it was very scary. It was very traumatic, and just telling the police officer my story and him doing the math. And he's the only reason why I knew I was only getting 4 hours of sleep a day. And I remember him telling me I was ready to arrest you for neglect. But after I heard your story, I knew that you were telling the truth about what happened. And I'm going to make sure that he does the time for the crime that he committed. They have me come in and they're just gathering the story, and they tell me we're going to offer him a plea deal, to which I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. We're going to offer him 30 years with the possibility of parole, to which I agreed upon because they can't give him this plea unless you as the victim agree to that, to which I did because I just wanted him to admit guilt. And so they offered it to him once, which he rejected. The day of the trial, they say again, hey, we're going to offer you this plea right now. You can plead right now and prevent myself, my son, everybody involved from having to take the stand. You can end this. And he rejected it. So she turns to him and says, I'm going to go for the maximum sentence I can on every single count because you rejected this plea. And that's exactly what she did. He's making all kinds of faces. He's just reacting very blasé about me retelling the story. So that was very difficult watching him react in the manner that he was reacting in. And then my son had to take the stand, and you're asking a 13-year-old boy to relive seeing his brother getting murdered, to which he does. And so they play the tape of a year before of him telling that same story. They play it in court. And my son is telling the same story that day that he's telling on the stand. So that was hard to watch. They play recordings from the hospital. And at that time, I had no idea that he went to the exit door. His father went to the exit door at the hospital. And that at some point in time, he was trying to leave. But at that moment that he was trying to walk through the door, a police officer was walking in that same door, and he turned around and he walked away, remaining in the hospital. So I know that it was nothing but divine intervention that day to make sure that he was held accountable for what he had done. They tell me what was found in the autopsy, and they showed the pictures. And at the time, my victim advocates from the court told me, Toni, we're not going to let you see these pictures.
and they instructed my family to cover me. So the victim advocates and my family were both literally covering me and preventing me from physically looking at the pictures. And then I hear the extent of his trauma. I heard that he had 3 skull fractures. He had a severed lip, so this top part of his lip was severed. He had blood spatter on his ribs. He had bruising all over his body, and he had a bruised testicle. To this day, I still don't know how you even managed to do something like that to a 13-month-old baby. And I find out that they took his eyes because there was so much bleeding to his eyes that they had to take them during the autopsy. And we get through the whole trial, and the only time that I wasn't present was when the defense was giving their defense, because there was nothing that you could say to me to justify what he had done. I remember going back in after defense made their case, which was very brief, and the jury goes to deliberate, and it took them 4 hours. And we come back into the room, and he had 14 counts, to which 13 he was convicted of. And the biggest sentence was his life without the possibility of parole. He was given that charge, as well as numerous convictions of child cruelty, battery, assault, even cruelty to animals, because I had a dog at the time, and the dog was in the house at the time of Mikkah's murder. So they even charged him with cruelty to animals. And I just remember hearing each of the counts being read and just not being able to shout in the courtroom, because of course they let you know that if you make any noise or if you do anything, they can report a mistrial. At the time when they were reading the verdict, and I looked behind me, the entire courtroom was filled with people, with the jurors, with police, with just everybody wanting to just make sure that he was put away for the rest of his life. And he was. And I have a big photo that they used during the trial that I was able to have each of the jurors sign on the back. And I have with me to this very day just their words of encouragement, their support, their strength. I'm so grateful to those 12 people because they held him accountable, and they tried to give me some sense of just normalcy after that, because how do you pick up your pieces, the pieces of your life after that? But they gave me hope that I could at least move forward knowing that he was going to be away for the rest of his life. You know, sometimes you can't handle certain things on your own, and you have to not be afraid to say, you know what, I can't handle this. 4 years after everything happened, I snapped. I did. That moment finally came where it was like, okay, I'm losing it. Mentally, emotionally, I was like, okay, I can't deal with just life. And my cousin at the time, he came and he talked with me, he hugged me, and he kind of helped ground me. So having people that are there for you, your family members that are truly there for you, having them to talk to, having them to tell you it's okay to not be okay was really instrumental. You know, that kind of helped me shift my perspective back to, okay, Toni, you've been doing it this long. You can get through this. And after that, I've been moving forward. So surround yourself with family and friends that love you, that you can talk to. And if you can't talk to them, seek someone out. I know therapy, they have free access now to mental health. And so take advantage of having those resources to saying, hey, I'm not okay. I need to speak to someone and help reshift that focus. And honestly, self-service. Doing something bigger than yourself really can help you get out of that funk when you know that you're helping someone else who's been through the same trauma that you've been through. Helping them seek a different path and helping them go through their trauma has worked wonders for me.